Hi, everyone, and welcome to AB Conversations, where we will help you CFP your way out of it. A podcast where you get into the minds of a couple certified financial planners on how we think and feel about everyday financial planning questions and what should really matter most to you. A healthier financial life starts now.
Hey, Ben. How you doing?
Good afternoon. Doing great. How about you?
Fantastic.
Lovely.
Can we stall some more before we get into the riveting topic of using home equity in retirement?
Yeah, this might surprise some people, right? This is
Yeah.
not something that I'd say we recommend with great frequency, but let's, kind of lay the groundwork here. For most retirees, your home is probably a big, large asset on your balance sheet. We often don't think of it as a tool for income, but that doesn't mean it can't be. So I guess the question that we should really dive into today, should you use it? If so, how?
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting because, like you said, and I'll double down on it, it's not something that we frequently recommend. But as we're getting deeper and deeper into, the retiree landscape and thinking outside the box, there have been certain scenarios where it could make a lot of sense. So, to your point, when we say use this home equity, what does that really mean? And it doesn't necessarily mean, the typical downsizing that I think a lot of
Oh,
people
right.
consider going into retirement, which we'll talk about that a little bit more in depth. But just something as simple as opening up a home equity line of credit just to have access to a pool of your equity, or a reverse mortgage, I think is typically one that a lot of people know exists, but it's often thought about, at least maybe I'm biased, right? But when I think about the world of finances, annuities, rightfully so in many camps, get a bad rap. And I think reverse mortgages kind of fall into that same camp.
Yeah. Yeah, but I guess that's what we should review today. If there are strategic ways, and maybe that's the way we should go about this. Let's maybe look at some of the real world scenarios where a
Mhm.
home equity really can probably be a game changer to your whole retirement plan. So
Yeah.
let's just jump into it. Scenarios where
Yep.
this might work out. I would say the first one that I kind of think about, we've done a podcast on this very recently, right? It's what is the proper timing for claiming Social Security, right? So let's now develop some sort of example here where home equity might come into play here. You've got somebody that maybe retires on the earlier side, at least as far as Social Security is concerned, right? You can access these benefits at age 62. Let's say your benefit that's greatly reduced from your full retirement age of 67. So let's say it's $1,800 a month. That same person, if they waited till age 70, if that benefit was now $3,200 a month, that's an
Hmm.
80% increase, right? The lifetime benefits coming from Social Security are huge. Now, how does this tie into home equity? Well, clearly, if we're not taking Social Security at 62, we got to bridge that gap. Where's
Yeah.
income going
And,
to come
and
from?
Yeah, and oftentimes, and I think we probably talked about this in that Social Security podcast, oftentimes it's okay, I'm going to rely on my investments and my savings, which is fine. But maybe I'll just pause it there because there is a subsequent one which will kind of bolster my comment.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's essentially using that home equity as just a bridge, right? We just need to get to whatever that next age is or where it may make sense. It just provides that additional level of flexibility. And like you said, knowing that by delaying Social Security, and I know we talked about this in that specific podcast, the math is always going to say to delay Social Security as long as possible because your benefit's going to be higher. And then each subsequent cost of living adjustment is going to be compounding, income on top of that. But that all assumes you're going to live well into your 80s, and beyond
Yeah.
for that
Yeah.
math to kind of work out. But yeah, that idea of using your home equity to buy yourself time to delay Social Security can could lead to many thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars of increased Social Security
Right.
benefit over a long lifetime. That could be huge.
Yeah, you're effectively buying yourself some time. And if you're going to age in place in your home, then using your equity to buy that time, if you do have a long and healthy life, yeah, it could really make sense. I mean, and it shouldn't be lost on us. Social Security is also inflation adjusted over time. So this isn't just more dollars like earlier in retirement. It could be really protecting you and your longevity from rising costs in the future.
Yeah, and so this will dovetail into the next scenario. So that idea of just kind of being that bridge
Mhm.
between certain time frames, right? And if we're thinking about Social Security, delaying it, oftentimes people will rely on their investments. But what happens in that scenario if you're relying on your investments to delay Social Security and it's just not a good time in the markets?
All right.
And now you're delaying Social Security, which more often than not is good, but now you're in a scenario where you're taking from your savings, you're taking from your investments while the markets are also in a rough patch. That can have a negative compounding effect. So here again, the bridge of using home equity to buy yourself time to maybe not rely on the investments for a period of time in down markets, right? Just think of it's the sequence of returns risk, which I know we did talk about recently too. That idea that, somebody starts with $1 million, they retire, and
Mm,
all of a sudden the market drops, 20% over a couple year period. Now, this is assuming we didn't do the work on the front end or the client or whoever, didn't have their three bucket strategy kind of set up that
sure.
would, in theory, be able to buy yourself some time to not have to liquidate, investments when things are down. But the idea of just, again, relying on the home equity line as a bridge, as a layer of flexibility to allow your investments to recover, because we know historically that has always happened. It's just
Yeah.
been a matter of
Right.
how long has it taken. And hopefully that avoid the golden goose scenario, right? Where we want to be living off the eggs and not eating the geese. That once we do that, we're not going to get those eggs again in the future. So that's the idea there of using that home equity line for when markets are not as favorable.
Yeah. All we're looking to do is, again, not have the timing of the market derail the future of that portfolio. So it could certainly make sense there. I'm going to jump to another one. And it's kind of in that same camp of just maybe bad timing or surprises, right? Life does not always give us great heads up on what's going to happen for us. And healthcare surprises are often one of those things that are not only just this big stress point, but it can really be disruptive to your savings, right? So, can home equity then be kind of this flexible backstop, right? So, let's put math to this again. You know, a spouse has some sort of healthcare event, and now maybe there's a long term care need, and there's a $6,000, $7,000 a month bill that we weren't anticipating, and that happens for 2 years. Okay, extrapolate that out. We're talking 120, 130, $140,000. Most people build their wealth in a retirement account, right? And if now they
Mhm.
need to tap into that retirement account, we're just compounding problems here, right? Not only maybe the timing of taking money out, as you just illustrated, but that could also be a large tax bill, right? And we don't want that. That compounds the
Yeah,
problem.
exactly. That's exactly the words I was going to use. It's that potential compounding negative effect. When you talk about compounding growth, that's a wonderful thing. Everybody knows, the time value of money, but this can work in reverse as well. And some of that just comes down to the timing. And I know you said that, right? The idea of using home equity doesn't necessarily need to be a long-term solution. It often in these scenarios that we're presenting, it really is just it's a temporary
Yeah.
a temporary bridge. It's that temporary solution to buy yourself the time to spread out some of your impact, right? And just lessen the financial ramifications over just a much longer period of time. So yeah, that idea of accessing the home equity versus an IRA withdrawal, number one, yeah, you're going to avoid the taxes because you're not going to pay income taxes on the equity in your home. And ultimately it comes down to the flexibility that just is provided by going through that process. So maybe we'll go to one more and just, beyond simple emergencies and sticking on that tax side of things, the idea that home equity can
Yeah.
manage taxes over time. The one thing that this will not affect everybody, but there is essentially a cliff when it comes to Medicare premiums based on your income. So depending on somebody's situation, there is a world where, taking additional withdrawals from investments may push them over that income limit. And now it's that domino effect, right? Those negative compounding effects of Now, not only do I need to take more from my investments, which may or may not be okay depending on the situation, but now I'm having the effect of now I'm going to pay more for my Medicare premiums moving forward
Yeah.
because I've taken a bigger withdrawal this year for whatever that reason may be, right? All these different scenarios we're painting. If it's something as simple as, well, there were higher healthcare expenses or there was a long term care event,
Right.
that's the
Right.
scenario that just feels awful where you're dealing with that, but now you're getting bumped into potentially a higher tax bracket and your Medicare premiums will be increasing the following years as well. So there's ways to use this home equity to manage your taxes to some degree from year to year as well.
Yeah, maybe this is where we can pivot a little bit into talking, a little bit more on the trade-offs, right? Because tapping into home equity does not mean that it doesn't come with some sort of trade-off, whether that's cost, whether that's repayment, right? So if
Mm,
home equity can help, I guess the next question is going to be like, which of these tools should you use and when, right? And
yeah.
we've referenced both of them, so maybe I'll kickstart it. People are probably more familiar with a home equity line of credit, right? That line of credit really means, okay, I can tap into it when I want to, and I don't necessarily have to take it all. I think that fits some of those shorter term needs that we kind
Mhm.
of reference in certain scenarios, right? The costs of that aren't as big up front, but the issue there is you are going to repay that back, right? That is a line of credit. It kind of becomes a bill. And we've also seen, I think, maybe in more dire circumstances, right? Banks can freeze those. They did back in
Yeah.
2008. But I think
Yeah.
just generally speaking, that is a pretty quick way for a short-term fix, whether it was something like you mentioned, a healthcare bill, markets. I just want to avoid some taxes this year. It's a tool. It's a resource.
Yeah. Well, and sticking on that idea of, banks being able to kind of freeze the home equity line of credit kind of space, we've heard from clients these last couple of years where, very specific banks are just getting out of the home
Yeah.
lending space sometimes. And well, I'm thinking of one scenario in particular. They've had a home equity line of credit open for 20 plus years, used it sparingly, do not carry a balance now. And all of a sudden the bank comes to them and says, we're going to close this for you. We don't want this
Yeah.
liability out there anymore. And now your options are kind of taken away from you. There certainly is the option to now go to another bank, but that is just more of a process, more time, more effort than may be needed. So the other option there is still within that realm of a line of credit, but it's under the umbrella of a reverse mortgage. So to your point,
Right.
it's similar in that you can draw based on what you need and when you need it, but it can't be frozen. There's no there doesn't have to be any repayment process,
Right. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That is one of the bigger, I guess, benefits to doing the reverse mortgage side is there's not the need to make ongoing payments, moving forward. And that borrowing capacity, that line of credit in theory should grow over time because it's tied to the value of the home. And we know that over time, the home values will increase. So there's some benefits there, but this is all assuming to a certain degree that someone's going to age in place in their home when thinking about that reverse mortgage, because that then becomes another risk.
Yeah, and let's just stay there because I think the last part of this is really to talk about these as trade-offs, right? Again, if we've explained the tools, there are costs associated, and this isn't meant to be a podcast on the nitty-gritty details of home lending, but in
Yeah.
that idea of aging in place, I think we deal with a lot of people, when we talk about legacy planning, that they kind of want this home or their home to be passed to their kids. More often than not, when we're a part of the process of settling an estate, especially if there's multiple children, the decision is, well, we're gonna sell it and we're gonna divide the proceeds. So I think
Mhm.
somebody's legacy planning and how they view their property is a big variable in this. But if you
Sure.
are, to your point, aging in place and it's not really the family plan that a child or one of children are gonna live in this home, then it does bolster the kind of option, I would say, to use the equity out of that home if it's going to serve your own retirement plan better.
Right. And I think that just speaks to just changing values or just preferences and just demographics, right? Of previous generations compared to now. Families are more spread out than they were in the past. So the idea of, the child wanting to inherit and live in the
Yeah,
parents' house, that feels like that's becoming less and less common. So to your point, that it really does come down to the individual situation and what do the parents prefer, but that could still very much differ from what the children may want and prefer at some point. And we wouldn't want that to get in the way of, we have had these conversations, maybe not this specifically, but in dealing with older individuals in this area, I'll say it's the Pennsylvania Dutch kind of mentality that is,
Yeah.
I have this asset, I want to pass something to my kids, and the house is a good way to do that because I'm not going to spend from it. There's going to be value there no matter what. But if that precludes that person from doing more things in their retirement or just having additional flexibility for what in the end the kids may just liquidate anyway, that would feel not to be a great use of their savings and of an asset.
Yeah, I think how people feel about it is clearly important here, right? We're going to have to balance the numbers with the values, right? Even if the math makes sense, we're not advocating here
Mm,
for everybody to do this. I just think for some retirees, home equity is a lever that let's hope they never have to pull. Again, not even thinking worst case scenario, just you have other savings, you've got sustainable income that's going to cover all your bases. But again, life's not a straight line, curveballs happen. I think there are certain situations, and hopefully we've illustrated that, where we as planners should at least have the conversation with you. This may be a different way. I think you said it at the onset here. We're thinking outside the box a little bit of all the tools that you have, all the levers that you can pull. Let's just recognize that home equity is one of them.
yeah, and I think maybe I'll put a bow on it with this. Like you just said, these are tools. These are not, magic wands or the silver bullet that's
Yeah.
going to solve all of our problems. There are downsides. There are trade-offs when it comes to essentially using your equity to be a bridge. There's going to be costs, there's going to be fees, there's potentially, insurance premiums that are a part of that. It can be slightly more expensive than, some other options, but they are just that. These are tools, these are potential strategies, and that's where it's kind of our job to help assess where does this make sense? What are those trade-offs? And based on the situation, just what may be an okay path forward. I just try to figure out putting a lot of these pieces together to just hopefully put somebody in a much
Yeah.
better spot than feeling like you're just painted into a corner and now I only have this one option and I just got to take it from my retirement account.
Yeah, this definitely falls into that camp of everybody has unique circumstances. So, what would work for one is not going to work for another. And use of home equity is, definitely going to be in that camp. But hopefully
For
this was
sure.
helpful. Again, just one more thing for us to be considering when we're working with retirees.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. As always, appreciate your leadership here. Your
Hey, thanks.
wise words.
Likewise.
Till next time.
Bye.
Hey everyone, Adam and I really appreciate you tuning in. Please note that the opinions we voiced in this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be most appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, your accountant, and financial advisor or tax advisor prior to making any decisions or investing. Thanks for listening.